Welcome again to the CXO roundtable that we're having. And one of the two topics that we're going to have today, I think it's a personally very interesting topic and probably is very relevant to the GCC world in general, right? And that is the unspoken rules of cross-cultural communication, right? That's the topic that we're going to get into. And before we get into the topic, I would like to do a short activity, right? So I would like you to raise your hand if you ever walked out of a meeting, right, fully convinced that everyone was aligned, right, but then absolutely nothing happened. Okay. Yeah. Raise your hand, keep it, raise your hand if you ever received feedback that was so carefully wrapped in politeness, right, that you actually realized that it is a feedback much later. Right, and then raise your hand if you've been ever in a room or even a Zoom call where you knew someone disagreed, but then nobody said anything, right, and you said nothing either, or probably you said, and then the meeting ended and everybody said it was a great session. Right, and the last one, raise your hand if at any point in your career you've said yes and meant something completely different, not probably now but probably earlier. And also if somebody has said yes to you and meant something completely different, right? So we're all seeing hands raising up here, right? And it's not because, it's not like somebody is malicious or somebody is trying to mislead or that they're lacking professionalism, right? It's just, and in fact possibly all of us are thinking that we are good communicators as well, right? But, and especially as you people here, I think the thing is that something is getting lost, and to me it's not lost in translation but lost in assumption. The assumption that the person across the table, right, he's running on the same invisible rule book as yours, right, what we think is right. And this is what it really makes fascinating for me right now, is because you're all in some way leading teams and engaging with teams across cultures, right? And which means that in your daily grind or work, you would probably have more than one rule book, right? That is a rule book that you think is making most sense, probably a rule book which the headquarters thinks is how things should work, and another one which is what your team, the client team that sits in a different geography probably thinks of, right? And everyone believes their version is just normal, right? So there was a line that Hari captured perfectly, which is cross-cultural communication rarely breaks because people lack intent. It breaks because the rules are invisible and everyone assumes the rules are universal, right? So that's the thing about this. So, and there is, I did some digging, and there is some theory in the space of linguistics which kind of addresses that, and we'll kind of anchor on this as well, which is called the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, which says that your language that actually you speak does not only describe a reality, but it also shapes your reality. Which means, for example, if you see in English, your mother's brother is also uncle and your father's brother is also uncle, right? But for us, these are different things, right? And then those automatically have implications on interactions and how we are thinking of connecting with them and so on, right? The same thing I think carries forward at work as well. In American speaking English, we are also speaking in English. A yes can seem different to different kinds of people, right? So that's what we're kind of trying to deal into, and so therefore it is to me it's not a communication problem, but more like a perception problem, and that's why it's probably harder and more interesting to work on, right? And so I want to, before getting into the discussion, I want to share some personal stories of mine, and I've had the fortune of being in a couple of GCCs before getting into academia. In fact, long before it was coined a GCC. So one of these was when I was in a team and I was working with another team. My counterpart was in China, Chongqing, And over calls, that manager would and I would, when we are discussing, there would be, she would push back on some things, but she would agree on a lot of things, right? But then when I went, the team went, all of us went to visit the team in Chongqing, and in the meeting room, in the presence of a manager, her views were completely opposite to what we were discussing. And I'm sitting and thinking, is this the same person that I talked to, right? But then that's where I realized later that, cultures can impact, right? In a culture, vertical alignment is probably much more important than horizontal alignment, and she is probably doing that because that's what best in her culture. And another one was where I was leading an analytics team and supporting a Fortune 50 client, and then the account manager had come down, and we are having a review, and I was saying that, yeah, we've done very well and we are on track and we are doing good stuff. And he bluntly said the opposite. And he said, this is not going the right way, and we're not doing well, and all of that, right? Now, at that point in time, I was really upset because I said, even if you are actually giving me the feedback, you would have probably given it differently. But again, and of course we connected later and we patched up and he kind of shared things, etc. But at that moment I was upset. But if you think about it, he was sharing it because he thought that's the best honest way to do things, right? That I should share things because he thought I'm a peer and I should get a honest feedback. But it's just that I come from a different background and it looked like an insult to me, right? So, and that's exactly what we want to look at. How is that continuing to manifest in organizations now, and how do we really address that, and how do we find ways to get around it, is what we're trying to do, right? So the first question for you, and as we go around, the first round we probably can introduce ourselves because we didn't get that chance a little earlier. So when you look back, what was the moment that first made you realize that the rule book you were running on, right, wasn't the only one in the room?
So I'm Reena Dayal. I'm the founder and CEO for Quantum Ecosystems and Technology Council of India. This is a not-for-profit think tank focusing on the quantum ecosystem in India. But I've spent around 30 years in the corporate sector before that, working with Microsoft and TCS. So I have experience both in a GCC as well as a services company. So the first time really when I realized that was, we used to work for international clients, and I was part of a consulting team doing process consulting at that time. And most of my interactions were with the customer in Hong Kong. And so first of all, it was strange because they used to get up pretty early for us, and they would start, they were very deliberate on asking, first thing in the morning, they would start asking questions, and you are just getting into the office. And you're like, don't they understand that I have to at least open my email and, go through it before I start answering? So that seemed like a very strong thing. And then over the phone, they always sounded very rude to me. To me, it was like, my God, what a rude set of people, right? Because they would just keep asking and without paying attention to, it seemed to me, as to how I was responding to it. After a couple of months, I actually visited them. I was supposed to spend some time, actually work out some workshop plans with them and so on. And my God, the moment, there was, they were there in person, the difference was stark. They were actually very polite and very nice people. So what I discovered was that because English was not their native tongue, and when they were speaking in English, they were using a tone which they did not understand as to how it is coming across to me sitting somewhere else, and it did not reflect to me actually who they were. So there was a huge difference in perception. So communication is about everything, right? It's about how you speak, the language that you use, and even how we use languages seems so different. I'll give you an example from India itself. So I shifted from the north to Karnataka in Bangalore, And once I was there, when you say something to people in Karnataka, will say, "Is it so? Is it so?" It's very common, right? Aha. So they will translate that hoda directly into English as "Is it so?" In the north, if you every time you speak and somebody says "Is it so?" it sounds like that the person is questioning you, right? So it took me a while to figure out that, oh, this is, I asked somebody and they told me, no, this is direct translation of hoda. So you're saying, "Is it so?" right? So even in India, I've faced that situation. Yeah. Yeah.
So hi, I'm Swati, and I've spent close to 25 years in sales and working across global organizations and Fortune 500 companies with US, Europe, Asia, Middle East. So I'm a perfect catalyst or specimen, so to say, for, for this topic. But coming to your point that you made earlier, I think everything falls back on culture, conditions, and conditioning. The 3 C's that I always say. Now, the aspect that I have learned as Indians, we should take pride in, because we adjust, we are resilient, we have taken the efforts year after year in understanding the cultural nuances across the globe, across our clientele. We take that effort, right? Our local languages are so varied, yet we've taken efforts to speak English so fluently just because it's a common language accepted globally. Similarly, I don't see, or I haven't seen the similar effort, let's say a French guy taking or a Japanese person taking. They take pride in their cultural, upbringing and nuance and communication styles. And they have facets, they have groups where they say that we will flourish and do well within that space. We are the only nation that I think we should take pride that we have gone and worked with each of the cultural nuances and understood all the 3 aspects of culture, conditioning, and conditions that the client is currently working with us and successfully imbibed ourselves there. Right. So, I mean, all of us work across with most of the major organizations, clients with different languages, different cultural nuances. But at the end of the day, each of them have a different facet of responding, communicating, right? We are taking that, all the questions that you had asked earlier, we've taken that double click on each of them to see, what do they really mean? With the yes, did they really mean a yes? That increase in tone, was it affected or kind of sent to me, the insult that you spoke about? Are they, when they're all saying no, is it just for the heck of saying no, or do they really mean it? So every body language that they emanate is something that we've kind of learned to live with. And that's why I think most of my answers were no, for the fact that 25 years working with multiple people, I know when a person doesn't want to speak to a woman. I know when a person, you walk it and you can judge the room today. That I know that this deal will not go through because I'm not a French person and this person only is just doing it for, your 9 yards. So I think 25 years we have seen it through. I think we should take pride in ourselves that we are the only nation who can work across cultural boundaries.